Good evening, folks. Very soon now, we are going to begin a focus group session having to do with the program and the future use of the Elliston estate. So please make your way over to this sort of quadrant of the cafeteria if you're interested at all in finding out more and in participating with this focus group session. Thank you. Okay, sounds like this might be a really good time for us to get started. I just wanted to say a couple things. First of all, it's really great to be here with Principia, and I should say with the Principia venue, and with the Friends of Elliston, representing a great effort to try to advance the continuing use of the Elliston estate. I want to mention that the real purpose of our evening tonight is not so much to inform, but to be informed. We're interested in gleaning as much as possible ideas and, inspiration from our audience that can help us in determining what you're soon going to be hearing about the highest and best use of the Elliston estate. Can we give it any more time at all, or are we ready to get things started here? All right. I want to mention that then being a Principia alumnus, it's always really appreciated for me to be able to be back in a fold where we can exercise some of the principles that we always are taught and instructed in Christian Science. One of which is a rule for motives and acts. And I wanted to just touch base on this very briefly because I think the application in this particular instance, dealing with the Elliston estate, is incredibly important and direct. The top line, the first sentence, neither animosity nor mere personal attachment should impel the motives or acts of the members of the Mother Church. Now, while that is a statement that all Christian scientists are very familiar with, still, in its context as it relates to our work going forward with Elliston, it's very important that we remain incredibly objective and open to fresh and good ideas without that sense of personal attachment. And I just wanted to take a minute and just touch base on that. In fact, what we actually need as we're approaching our work with Elliston is a great deal of fresh thinking. What has taken us to this point, as you saw with the video, somewhat of the overview of the Eliestoun grounds and structures as they exist today, there's a reason why they're in this condition. And to continue with the same efforts that brought us to this point in the first place are not going to work. We have to come up with altogether new thoughts and fresh ideas about how to revitalize a very notable landmark and to keep its place and its service to our community vital. In a few minutes, I'm going to introduce Helen Wills, who is the president of the board of the Friends of Eliestoun. But just first, I think it's a good idea to understand the structure that we're working with in terms of the advancement of the effort to conduct the feasibility study. Now, the feasibility study is designed only to take us to the point where we can see clearly the direction that the effort should take. So beginning at the top, we've got, of course, Helen Wills, the president of the board of directors, and she'll be up here shortly to introduce other board members. We are ourselves Metropolitan. I am a principal of Metropolitan Build, and we have been selected to conduct a feasibility study to determine a few of the different things: development feasibility, the design and budgeting facets, and assuming all of that moves forward, we will also then be working in the construction management capacity. This position, community liaison, is one that we recognize that we really need and is essential for this effort to both work inside of the context of the Principia community and on a much larger scale outside of the Principia community. Under Metropolitan, we're going to be functioning as financial planner. We will be working very closely with historic consultants as we advance our work. The Director of Professional Services is essentially me. We're going to be conducting our research, developing the architecture, which we'll see some of this evening, as well as different engineering aspects, and then involving specialty trades. We will also be guided towards identifying a director of fundraising, which is important, in fact essential, for this work to continue. Did that one. I want to start by just identifying architecturally the facility of Eliestoun that we're working with. And we're starting in the basement. As most can recognize, this is somewhat of a determining principle, if you will, for how the rest of the structure comes together. What I want to mention is that for our structure, the main building at Eliestoun, the exterior is all a load-bearing masonry. It's Rubel stone foundation, and all of the structure above is supported here on perimeter walls. The main interior bearing beams are shown in this slide, and these project up through the structure and pretty much determine the room layouts for everything that happens above. Keep doing it, sorry. So what we've done in terms of trying to identify for Eliestoun some of its flexibility and its potential use, we began by trying to just see the different areas that it could potentially support. We're not saying this is it. We're simply saying these are flexible enough to achieve these uses. First is support. This area right in here is ideal for things like kitchen, office, janitorial, that sort of use on this first floor, on the main floor. These areas here and here can achieve And again, I'm not saying that's where they're going to achieve, but they can achieve what's known as assembly. A lot of different performance venues or display spaces, things where we will see a number of different people congregate. The outside space here is also somewhat of an extension of that, and it amplifies what can happen, but clearly it not being enclosed has a much more limited use than the areas in here. Also, on this end, which is an addition after the original house, is the garage. That can also be, for instance, classroom space, laboratory space, and that sort of thing. Excuse me. Okay, second floor. The area directly above that main floor, in terms of how the home was originally conceived, these were essentially the family areas for the owners of the estate, and these were more the support areas for like staff and groundskeepers and those sorts of things. This area also can achieve a place of assembly. The ceiling heights are correct, the exterior volumes work pretty well, and that use can be afforded here. It can also be a residential use in the event that that's where the highest and best use exploration takes us. On this side, however, because the roof slopes and because the geometries of these rooms and the structures are so much smaller, it's almost it's extraordinarily difficult to take them out of the residential usage. The third floor, very similar. It's pretty much going to need to be and remain a residential. The thought, we are looking at a program for the very long term, century term, is what we're looking at. And one thing we know is that the uses that we determine today and the programs that we work with today have to remain incredibly flexible, because over that duration, the uses that we come up with today are not going to be the uses that are in place 50 years from now, perhaps. And what we need to do is to afford the luxury of that flexibility to happen. Almost as important as the facilities on the estate are the estate grounds. This is truly what's known as a cultural landscape. There is a very notable landscape architect involved that Helen will comment to when she's up, that laid out a terrific landscape plan as Turner had engaged he and the primary architect to put together the site. It's important that that is recognized and that we look at, to some degree, the support of the cultural landscape or the estate buildings themselves, as well as the sustainability of landscape design that might diffuse out into the rest of the work. But the areas right around the estate are incredibly important to recognize their cultural significance. All right. At this moment, it's time for me to turn the rest of this presentation over to Helen Wills, the President of the Board of Directors.
Before we get started on my notes, I wanted to introduce the other members of the board of the Friends of Eliestoun. And if you would stand so people can see Jonathan Hosmer, Jerry Lewitz, Laura McMullen, and we have two student reps, Robbie Butler and Ellie Miller. And I also want to give a special note. I know Alice Durbin's not here tonight. She's a former board member, as well as Brandon O'Neill is our first student rep. Okay. Yes.
Before you leave that slide, can you just read
what these are?
Right.
This is a pond. This says vineyard and garden.
You can't hear me. I'll stand over. This is a pond. This is a vineyard and a garden, and this is where the little office building is. These were stables. This is the house itself that says dwelling. I believe that is the location of the pagoda, which isn't there right now. And this is the location of the original ice house.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. How did Eliestoun come about? There was a man that was traveling up in the area, General James Semple, and he fell in love with this area. He later became a senator of the state of Illinois, and he founded the village of Eliestoun. One of his children was Lucy Semple. Lucy was very prominent in St. Louis society and was referred to in the newspapers as the Queen of St. Louis. One of her children was Ada, her youngest daughter, and Henry Turner was courting Ada and got to know this area and fell in love with it as well. So after he asked her to marry him and they got married, he, if you guys are familiar with Pride and Prejudice, he's like Mr. Darcy. $10,000 a year he had. As a young gentleman of 28 years old, he wanted to be a gentleman farmer. So he purchased over 700 acres up on the bluffs and hired managers and so forth to help him take care of it. The family would often summer in East Massachusetts and became aware of the work of an architect, Alexander Wadsworth Longfellow. And if his name sounds familiar, he is indeed the nephew of the famous poet. He studied at Harvard, at Boston Tech, at Beaux-Arts in Paris, and after he completed his studies, he wanted to work where anyone in architecture would want to work in that age. In Chicago at the offices of Henry Hobson Richardson. He started working for him in 1883 and worked for him as a draftsman until Richardson's passing in 1886 when he opened his own office. He is essential to the style, obviously, he's the architect, of the shingle-style architecture of the huge wraparound porch here in the middle of the Midwest. Henry Turner loved that style, and when he invited Wadsworth Longfellow to come to the area, they both agreed that this would be perfect, but instead of looking out on the Atlantic Ocean, they're looking out on the Mississippi River. Longfellow suggested a landscape architect for Henry Turner. He wasn't yet advertising himself as one, but Turner was very interested in him. He had a new idea. Instead of planting gardens like for the rich with the formal Victorian gardens, he would look at the landscape that he was going to be planting, and he would plant trees and shrubs and flowers to make it look as if they naturally grew there. Henry Turner was sometimes of necessity an innovator. I love this picture because it shows an early picture of the original house. If you know the house at all, this area here used to be a porch. It's now a bathroom. And the only way to get water up there was by horse and wagon. And he didn't like that very much, so he hired a team of 2 or 3 men, and it took them a year and a half to dig the well. The well was 900 feet, length of 3 football fields, before they hit water. he had a windmill in the yard that would pull that water up that distance. And then in the kitchen, it was often the kids' job to crank the hand pump, would take the water up into the attic where there was an open air tank. And then when you were in the, where you wanted to use water in the kitchen or the bathrooms areas, you turn the spigot, gravity made the water come out. It was very innovative. Especially for the current students, some of the others who may know have lived in it in the past, you can see the outside, but you haven't had the opportunity to see the inside, so I thought I'd take you on a very brief walk. When you enter the main door from the riverside, this is the entryway. And this door back here is that door, which is on the back porch, that small back porch with the lights left on. If you turn to your left in the entryway, you can see the living room, the parlor, with the fireplace. These are built-in bookshelves. And they often sat around the fireplace to read. And here's a dog. I understand there's 6 to 8 dogs on the estate at any given time. They love to have dogs around. And behind her over here, where you cannot see it, are the built-in bookshelves in the window, and they are still there today. If you were standing with your back at this lamp and looking towards the river, you would see this view. This is where you can stand on the porch and peer in the windows on the main floor. If you turned right instead of left from the entryway, you would find the dining room. And we believe this woman here is Ada Ames. And if you notice these cabinets, this is what it looks like today. The beautiful original wood was painted a light green. Additionally, on the left-hand side of the dining room is this wall. This fireplace, when I was a student here, was a double open fireplace from the foyer through to the dining room. And at some point it was closed off. It's now boarded up in the entryway. And I always get this question, is there the secret compartment in the house? I can unequivocally say yes. It is in this cabinet, and I think it's this panel that lifts up, and the family had that available if they felt the need to put the silver away or the jewelry or whatever to store it for safety. Okay, if you go up the staircase, this is the landing between the first and second floors. And as you get up, those are the windows between the second and third. And the tower room is one underneath this unusual part of wood. And if you were standing right there and you were looking out, this is the view you would see. The Friends of Eliestoun had to do a lot of learning about not-for-profits, 501c3, all of those types of things. And as we thought through it and prepared the paperwork, we had to define a mission and a purpose. They're very similar to one another, but we realized we don't want to end up back where we are. Everyone loves the house. It has architectural importance. There's no question about the beauty, but we don't want to redo it and end up back where it's not being used and being kept up. So we recognize we need something more, and it needs to be something that can help sustain it and hopefully also generate income. So with that, I will introduce Jay Simon. He's the other part of Metropolitan Build, and he's going to help get us going through the evening.
Thank you, Helen. What a great turnout. Really appreciate having everybody in the room that's so alive and interested. Thanks for listening to the presentation that Jeff had to inform you a little bit about the Eliestoun estate, and Helen about the history of the estate. We have some dignitaries in here who can tell us even much more about the history of the estate. We're so I'm blessed to have those folks in this room. What I want to do is begin with a piece that I want to make sure everybody understands why we're really here this evening. And it's not about us telling you what we know about Elliston, because quite frankly, we're interested in hearing what you have to say about Elliston in the various, what we call highest and best use analysis of the site. We'll talk a little bit about more what that means in just a moment. But our mission here tonight is not only to save Elliston from extinction, but it's to breathe new life into the building, a new sense of purpose into the building. And we're trying to understand what the best use and the best purpose for this building might be. Jeff gave you some ideas about what the limitations of the house are, but it's a 5,500 square foot home that was a private residence. And that worked well as a private residence for so many years, but in the repurposing, the reutilization of that residence in different fashions that now have it on the verge of extinction. So obviously, we need to rethink where it is going from here. So you're part of that process this evening. And I put on here, think of this room tonight as a small business incubator, and you are all entrepreneurs who are looking to help us revalue and repurpose this home. And this home is something possibly residential, possibly it has a sense of what the places of assembly in the interiors of the house may hold for other income earning purposes. And the beauty of the estates and the grounds, I mean, they're not utilized now. Maybe they could be utilized a lot better and for reasons that we may or may not be thinking about or have thought about at this point in time. And then hopefully we have those in the room who have that sense of how do you make money in a 501c3 environment, because the Friends of Elliston is a charitable organization, and it has a charitable cause and charitable purpose that was mentioned in the mission and purpose by Helen in her presentation. But we have to figure out a way to not only have it raise money by philanthropy, but also for an income earning purpose. So we look at highest and best use. It's known as a real estate term that was developed in the 1800s for the appraisal industry to kind of value what a home is worth, for example, or what a building, a commercial establishment is worth. And so there's certain parameters in understanding what highest and best use really is. Well, it has to be legally permissible. And of course, in the environment we're in, that doesn't just mean the state of Illinois' laws and the local municipality laws, but it's also the guidelines and the principles that Principia Campus holds. It has to be physically possible, meaning you cannot put a major addition onto a home that is noted for its historic importance. We have to respect that. We also have to understand you can't put a couple-story addition on the top of the building because it may have other reasons why those parameters just don't work. Ultimately, it all boils down to money, and it has to become financially feasible in order for this building to achieve its highest and best use. It has to be within the realm of reality. You cannot look at putting $100 million into the property and finding out that you can't ever recoup that kind of funding into this. And so we've got much smaller monetary sites. We want to have the highest amount of impact with the lowest amount of dollars, obviously, to make things work. That falls into the same premise of maximizing productivity. It's the highest result you can have by an investment into this property in the shortest amount of time. And that's how you maximize the productivity in a highest and best use analysis. Why am I explaining this to you? Because you're all going to be looking at this criteria, this limitation, when we send everyone off into 4 different specific groups in breakout sessions we're going to have here very soon. I know you're all just dying to do that, but I really want everybody to participate in that piece of this because it's that feedback we need your help with. On each of the tables, when you do your breakout sessions, we're going to have a specific criteria which we want you to also be aware of that are specific to Eliestoun, to the estate, and to the Friends of Eliestoun who are courageously pushing this forward. Must fit the mission and purpose of the Friends of Eliestoun. Now, I'm not going to repeat what Helen had up on the board, but I do want to point out to everybody, in bold at the bottom, the 501c3 is set up as a charitable cause. It's for religious, educational, and scientific purposes. So those are the realms of importance as we need to measure this to fit the mission and purpose of the Friends of Eliestoun. Other specific criteria, I don't want to necessarily read to you, but I do want to emphasize that ultimately, in order to have a 100-year repurposing of this building, we have to figure out a way to make enough money to pay for the programs, to pay for the cost of operation and maintenance, and in a sense create an endowment which right now is ballparked at around $1 million. You must also look in terms of the preserving historic significance of the building. Jeff mentioned about the cultural landscape. We want to make sure we have a sustainable landscape as well. We'll get into that in further conversations. It does need to have a sustainability sense to it, whether that's economic, educational, environmentally sustainable for the long term. That means that when we replace things in the home, we have to make sure that we don't have the least cost item because we want something of the longest gain, as well as from an energy standpoint. We want to make sure that the operational cost is kept at an absolute minimum. Last and not least, it is critically important that everyone realize when we repurpose the building, we have to make sure that it is unique and specific to the characteristics of Eliestoun. For example, on the Principia campus, we have lots of dormitories, we have lots of residential student housing, we have lots of classrooms. We don't want to mimic the same opportunities that already exist on campus because Eliestoun has unique virtues and capabilities that the campus cannot possibly duplicate, and that is why it should be made. That's a critical understanding as we go forward here. It is a unique, differentiated purpose, dissimilar from the Principia campus as a whole, because in actuality, this is sort of a private venture that is different than being funded by Principia. It is not funded by Principia, it is funded by private money. Along the lines of the educational opportunities, the purpose of Eliestoun is to further those educational opportunities. And a few examples of those things are listed here on the caterpillar that Kristen Serafini has so graciously given us for our use. An example of that is there could be a class that develops just from the act of doing a historic restoration. That is an educational experience that the students would enjoy, just as Mavik's original concepts of allowing the students on the Principia campus be involved in the restructuring of the buildings on campus. It could have religious uses such as weddings and Christian Science associations, scientific uses, the educational uses. These are all part of the charitable cause of which the Friends of Eliestoun is established for. So in a few moments, we're going to break into 4 groups, and our purpose in breaking into those groups is learning what I was hopefully able to communicate to you on the highest and best use principles. And we want to understand from you, what do you believe the highest and best use is? And why do you believe it's the highest and best use? And boy, if you could really go with it, tell us how you'd be able to make that happen. You are the entrepreneur, and I want to invite all of you to this thinking process, because this is our own think tank to be able to help us come up with some thoughts and ideas and expressions why this would really work best. We have 4 different places in the room that are set aside for gathering places initially that follow the same format that you see on the screen right now. The residential uses are located over here on my left. The places of assembly are located over here on my right. The estate grounds is an assembly place that we have also on my right, but further down the wall. And to confuse you even more, the income side of this is on the left-hand side of the house as well. And let me just sort of explain what the goal and purpose is in each of these groups. As you see on the board, what is the highest and best use? What is the highest residential use? Could it be something along the lines of a senior living facility? Could it be something along the lines of a graduate residential experience? Places of assembly could also be something that is more along the lines of different meeting places where you can actually rent out and create an income capacity for places that you assemble and meet at. So before we break into those groups, what I'm going to kind of do is just give you a quick rundown of what we're going to accomplish when we get there. What I'd like everybody to do, and hopefully it looks like everybody's finished their dinner and hopefully you get enough to eat there. What we can do is go to the area that you have the most interest and inspiration about in terms of where you think you can offer the greatest contribution for your thinking that you have here in your collective intelligence here this evening. What we'll do when we get everybody in those groups, we'll divide everybody up in small groups of probably 5 or 6. In each group, we'll have a combination of board members or non-board members, obviously, in the group. Any board member that's in a group is going to be the captain of that group. And the purpose of the captain is going to be to keep your group focused. There's a lot of distractions out here. There's a lot of things going on. But we have a very short period of time, i.e. about 15 or so minutes, that we're going to break into these sub-session groups. And the captains need to keep your group focused. In the first 5 minutes or so, look at brainstorming ideas, free-thinking those ideas. There are no bad ideas, and get all the ideas on the table you can. Then apply the criteria that you have with you to try to get that, understand what you believe is the best and highest use of the great ideas that you come up with in your groups. And the captain is going to be the one that comes back up at the end of our breakout session and post on the different areas where you are focusing your attention to all your great ideas. And I want you to circle the ones in a colored marker that we're going to give you and have a 1-minute ability to tell us why you think that is the best idea for Eliestoun under that use. Sounds simple, right? For those who have great handwriting, we want one person in each group to be nominated as a scribe. And there are black magic markers next to each of the chart holders that we have over here. And once we delegate the groups, we'll go ahead and get into sessions. The scribe will hopefully write down all the responses. The captain will bring that back to the table. We'll all meet again in this larger group and listen to everything that we've come up with. We're trying to harvest the good work that you're all hopefully helping us with. So, one quick other housekeeping note is we do have the Friends of Eliestoun site for those who are not with us this evening, but I understand this is available on radio and YouTube. And we are getting feedback from groups outside of this room, and we'll gather that feedback as well and post that in the appropriate areas at the same time. So at this time, hopefully all you are ready to stretch and you're tired of sitting down anyway, and we can all stand up and select the area that you feel that you have the most input. One comment which I have overlooked here is there's one sign back here that says income. And income's a little bit more unique than the specific areas because income can take a mixed use from each or any of these areas and combine that thought. And it's also a way for you to express how you think we can best raise money for the Friends of Elliston to make this a really viable experience. So, can we, hopefully we get everybody ready to get up and help out here, and appreciate all your participation. So we have income and residential on my left,
I'm thinking.
and place of assembly and estate grounds on the right. Please stay with us. Go to your spots as soon as you can. This is a residential version. I'm going to do. Well,
Well, I was going to do that, but I thought I needed to. Say hi when you're at the
Okay, in about 1 minute, we try to wrap up. We'll start the video review. captain, just go ahead and bring him. Bring him on.
Yeah, just go back to where you're sitting. You're fine.
Hello, hello. How's everybody going? Looks like we're close. Step in front of the camera. So whoever your captain is going to have the distinct pleasure of not only telling us what you come up with, but why you come up with it. So we look forward to those responses here. Everybody can return to whatever comfortable position you want to be. First of all, I appreciate everybody that hung in here and did a wonderful job, and lots of great comments, lots of great excitement in the room, and lots of energy, so thank you so much. I think we're ready. We've got all four of our topics now up on what I call the left side of the room, just because I'm facing you. And I'll get out of the way of our friend Eliestoun site. We do have some information that has come in from the website, but we're going to focus on what is in the room here tonight, and those who have responded by web comment. We'll get back to you after the meeting tonight, but please stay with us if you're watching. So let's go ahead and get started with our captains. Who do we have first? Hello.
All right, I'm John Hosmer, and I was in Place of Assembly Group, and I probably can't read this online, but we had some good ideas, and these are not really exclusive of one another. We narrowed it down to just two to talk about for a second, and they were as a corporate retreat, which I think the income people might like, and as a rentable space. We talked about weddings, banquets, other sorts of retreats. We're hoping these capture and embrace the isolation of Eliestoun as a really good component.
Good. Just sort of make it right and say,
Was there one that stood out as better than the other, or what was your number one?
I'm going to go with rentable space because that's pretty much all of them. Although as an academic use, we talked a lot about the connection to Principia in terms of having classes or scholar and residence types of academic connections to Principia.
So state and grounds, our captain.
Thank you, I'm Tom Fuller. One of the remarkable things is what surrounds the area.
we have, for example, timber rattlesnakes, an endangered species. We have the Eurasian tree sparrow, a bird that can only be seen in a handful of places in North America. It's one of the few places where you can see 300 species over the course of a year. There are probably only 7 or 8 places like that in all of North America. Sue and I have seen 153 species of bird on the campus itself. So we're thinking about biological groups, Sierra Club, environmental groups, academic groups interested in biology and the environment, educational seminars. These could be much smaller than a big full-blown event. And these kinds of groups certainly don't want to meet in a hotel by an airport. So we've got a perfect setting. They can come here, they can have their event, their conference or educational seminar, etc., and then enjoy the biological surroundings. So I think that makes very good use of the unique biological setting of Eliestoun.
An assistant captain.
Yes.
Number 2. So I was the captain for income, and we came up with 2 selections. We really couldn't decide, and I'll try to narrow it down as I talk. Our first one was looking at a senior community living space where we could have friends of Principia who have been around for a long time and who would love to still be here, be able to live in Eliestoun in 3 floors of residential space and take advantage of the things that we have on campus and be a part of the community still, but living close enough but separate enough that they could enjoy the quiet space to live. And one of the options that we discussed, because sometimes getting to the 3rd floor can be difficult, would be that we could build small structures around the estate that could be available, 1st floor structures that would be easy to access and that would allow for much more people to live there. And then we could use Eliestoun as kind of the community meeting space. So that was our first suggestion that we talked about that we really liked. And using the main house as kind of like a village hall in a way, a more general community meeting space would lend to that pretty well. And income comes from the leases that we would give to these people who would come and live in Eliestoun. And that would provide a pretty steady source of income, which would be pretty nice. The other one we looked at was a much more versatile use of the whole space as a hotel and spa with a restaurant aspect combined as well. That could be used for wedding venues and corporate events as well. So kind of a general bed and breakfast to hotel to kind of care facility that would kind of encompass all these things and also allow for a place of assembly when needed. And that was our other one. So I think we enjoyed the second idea a lot more because of the many uses that it gives, but those were our 2.
Hey, Robbie.
Yes.
The related programs.
Say that again.
The related programs we talked about.
Yes, they could. Both of these would offer ways that the students could also be involved to learn that. Is that right now? Okay. Thank you, Robbie.
I'm Ron Booth, and this is residential. What we came up with, number 1 here was dorm for special college groups, broad groups, a biology block. They'd be studying there the whole semester, I believe, and there could also be an ed block, ed majors, post-grads, married couples and families. And then also we came up with an idea for B&B using student help and possibly a period B&B with period dress and period food and including wedding groups. So
Was there any one that stood out as the best?
well, this one stood out as the best. They both seem to be about the same for income, we thought.
This one being the dorm for special college groups.
Got to project better. Thank you. Everybody did a great job. Now, what we want to be able to do as we wrap up, because I understand 7:15 is sort of our wrap-up time, and we're trying to, as much as possible, just sort of take and absorb this in, as you all have educated us in your thoughts and ideas. Jeff, you want to take a few quick comments of what you see?
I don't need this one.
I think that's working. Right. Everybody hear that okay? Right. Possibly in thinking summarily about what we heard this evening, there's an awful lot of feedback having to do with events, specifically weddings. And it seems like the idea of event space, it seems to me, has surfaced as something which is pretty important in terms of the use of the facility. And the attraction to be able to, the ability to attract people or users to that space emerge. And I'm going to say most specifically for me, from the Landscape and Grounds Committee or group that was looking at it from the point of view of it becoming such a primary attraction to be there on the grounds, so that the grounds themselves aren't necessarily generating the income, but they are the key attraction, or one key attraction that brings folks to the facility, and then the facility itself houses them, and that's where the income side works. And it sounds to me like the activities, just kind of growing from that idea, it's the activities of the estate that are most important. The uses of the place of assembly in conjunction with the grounds seems to me to be what's emerged tonight. At least that's my takeaway.
See if this one's still Anyway, all great comments. I ditto Jeff's remarks. I do think that we have such a unique opportunity with this site. This is the most spectacular site, most visually looking out onto the river, and you have all the species of everything from rattlesnakes to rare birds and everything else. There's no reason in my mind that we can't find some way of partnering with groups that would help attract and help us retain those who would be able to utilize the facility as a rentable facility, help utilize the facility as a residential facility, possibly on a rental basis, whether that's apartments or our dorm for special college groups for study, for example. There's certainly an educational purpose that can be united with this building and with this site. We're sort of just gelling on this. This is the first of our 3 planned focus groups. So this is our first shot out of the box, and if we're a little rough tonight, my apologies, but you all have smoothed over all the rough edges. You've done such a great job, and you've brought some great ideas to the table that we're all really excited about. What I want to make sure that we do in wrapping up is we have a couple announcements for getting involved, and hopefully this experience tonight inspires each and every one of you to want to be further involved in the opportunity to further the Elliston estate, as well as join the Friends of Elliston. They're looking for board members, they're looking for volunteers, they're looking for all the help that you can possibly give them. And frankly, we're starting out here, we really need your help. Like the Friends of Elliston on Facebook for all those that are so inclined. And please provide some follow-ups on the website and the give or get. Give or get, in the philanthropic world means either give money or help find a way to get money. Really, we're looking for your collective intelligence on connecting Friends of Elliston to those who would be so inspired
here, what you can expect is that our company, Metropolitan, will be working closely with Friends of Elliston to put a summary together of what we gleaned out of this evening. It'll be something then that we will post on websites and make sure that at least essentially the harvest of this evening is brought to some crystallization and we can put that out there. Now, I know a lot of people want to get out of here, but I also think it's a great idea to just open this up at this point to just questions. Is there anything that's out there that you might want to throw out that you want to, kind of voice? No? Leslie.
As we were going over the state grounds, I realized what was later said that the greatest asset of the site is view. And so we can make a beautiful site that will have a view that you cannot see anywhere else in the metropolitan area. And I think that is one of the big selling points for people from St. Louis especially.
Right.
When we were talking about grounds, and when I was thinking about the college campus as being significant architecturally, and this building is significant architecturally, wouldn't that also be a draw, either for funds, historic buildings, but also that would draw people to come? There are bugs on the campus with, what's his name? Bernard Maybach. It's been a while. That both sites would draw people to come and see the architecture. None of us talked tonight about how cool the house is architecturally.
Well, thanks for making that comment, and I appreciate that. I think part of what I heard you say, and I could be wrong on this, but part of what I heard you say was, are we seeking recognition of the historic character and significance of Elliston? Did I hear you say that? That was part of what the comment was? And I think the answer to that is this, or one answer is this anyway. We would love to see Elliston on the National Register of Historic Places. It's not currently. And it may not be the right move for Elliston at this point in time. But were it, that would open up a lot of opportunities, perhaps, for philanthropic giving. And that's something that's really important as we consider how we're going forward with this. Now, having said that, I'm also going to say that our firm is terribly sensitive to working with historic fabric. And we clearly recognize the historic significance, not only of just the architecture, but the history of the place and its significance. One of the things that Elliot just pointed out was that the situation of Elliston is absolutely critical. So if you think about it from this point of view, the Turner, actually the Ames family was in St. Louis a powerhouse in terms of residential development. They could develop anywhere in the region. This particular site was selected, certainly not at random. Neither was the architect, neither was the landscape architect. These were things which came together because it was a very discerning and capable family that brought together their incredible insight in terms of a region to find a unique spot like Elliston. There is no spot like Elliston. There is no place. And so I think that Elliot's observations about, its particular position and situation, the views, the topography, the area of agricultural wealth, that it's afforded, those are all really, really important and unique to this place. And things which, when we go forward, in terms of our historic work, are going to be folded into the effort. And I'm sorry for babbling on so long. It is very dear to me. I wanted make sure that comes out. Sorry.
No, that's okay. All of this has been talking about bringing the community, people from St. Louis, across the country, to unique places to attract everybody in the world. And one thing that is going to, I think, put a big, big stop on the vast majority of those is that there will be absolutely no alcohol allowed. Getting a non-Christian Science wedding in there is going to be impossible without at least champagne, and a corporate retreat that you can't get a beer at is going to be very, very unpopular.
Yeah. Are you picking up my comment to that? Are you going to make a comment to that? I was hoping you weren't.
Very valid.
Okay, your observations, are certainly warranted.
That's my sister, by the way.
I think that could be one of the attractions.
Really working.
That's one of the attractions of the news drive. Very important for some corporate retreats.
Okay.
Can you repeat?
There are conditions that we really have absolutely no control over. Although that concern and consideration is certainly one that cannot be overlooked. To what degree do we have an audience is essentially your question. To what degree do we have a viable audience of users without that particular component being understood? Your question is
Thank you, everybody. We're ready to wrap up. I just want to make sure everybody's aware that beyond this meeting this evening, we will be holding 2 more focus groups, one with the community leaders, the business community as a whole throughout ELSA and St. Louis metropolitan area to some extent. And that will happen in December. The date has not been set nor the place. Anyone who wants to give us their email or contact information that hasn't already done so this evening, we will make sure that you have an invite to that experience. We also are looking at a regional Midwest and community general focus group support, which obviously we're trying to spread the net as far as we possibly can to get all the feedback we possibly can, and of course get those interested who we want and should have interested in this very important project. So thank you all for coming this evening, and we really appreciate your time tonight.